Welcome everyone to another episode of the Human Experience podcast. This is your host, Eldin Hassa. I'm in London, England, and my host and my guest today is in Israel, in Jerusalem. His name is Moshe, and he is a very inspirational human being. Thus, I invited him to be on the Human Experience podcast. He wears many hats, many businesses, and I think today we're going to talk about his new book, which is a bestseller in many places in the United States. So the book is called It's All the Same to Me. So welcome, Moshe.
Thank you, Eldon. What a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure. I've read your book. I've read several chapters, and then I went to the end. I wanted to know what the end is, and your story is very inspiring. Your journey. So, could you share with our audience, with our listeners and our viewers, what inspired you to be on your journey to write the book and be where you are today?
Sure. Well, there's a lot of parts to it. Obviously, everybody's life story and life journey has different peaks and valleys and waves. But this book in particular, this really came after about almost a decade and a half of spiritual pursuit, trying to work out the meaning of self, the meaning of life, and how to experience what it is that we came here to experience. Right? What were we born into? But this particular book emerged right as the coronavirus pandemic really hit the world in March of 2020. That's when Western world really started to see it. I know already as early as January, Italy was being hit, and I remember following that closely in the news. Kind of just trying to see what was going to happen. And by March, we all over the world, we all kind of felt the close down. And when the world closed down, I almost took it as a message to go deeper into myself and into what my practice is about, what my beliefs are about, and take so much of the ideas and the practice that I'd been working on for years and really apply them. Because now, myself included, and everyone I knew was going through this major shift where people were feeling a lot of anxiety, people feeling loneliness and depression and a tremendous amount of emotion of unease. People didn't know what to do, my family included. And so that kind of propelled me into this mission for internally of really being centered and really being connected to the force that I believe guides the self and the world. And what came out of that the first 6 weeks of going so deeply within myself and then taking it, basically everything that I had learned and putting it into one place, I decided that this needed to be shared. And so then I started working on this book. It's All the Same to Me. And I didn't know that it'd be able to get out within a year of writing it, but I was very, very happy that it did. And the core idea of the book is how to come to that place of inner peace, where you experience the goodness of self and the goodness of the world, which I basically understand are the two most important things in any given moment of your life is what do you believe about yourself and what do you believe about the world you live in. And everything else is a reflection of those two things, which behind that is really just your level of consciousness in any given moment.
Absolutely. And you said 15 years of your own journey of self-discovery, self-growth, spirituality, personal development. And you've obviously, as you said earlier before the recording, you grew up in LA, right?
Yeah, that's right.
That's the accent. And you moved back to Jerusalem in your 20s, right? And in pursuit. So what was that journey like?
Yeah, no, it's amazing. I had no idea that I would have found myself in Jerusalem or being a spiritual teacher. But if you ask my mom, she'd probably tell you that she knew this all along. But I spent all my teenage years being the lead singer and songwriter for a rock band in Los Angeles. We were signed to a record label. We had toured the country several times. We had a couple CDs that we had released, which was released nationally to all the major record stores in America. And it was amazing. It was the time of my life, like imagine being a high school kid and you get to be on stage in front of hundreds, sometimes thousands of people a night and be able to sing your songs and perform. It was like everything I could have ever wanted. It was only when I was around 20 that I had somewhat of like an awakening. And a very good friend of mine asked me, how long are you going to do this for? Because I had deferred from university, and I decided not to. My family had moved out of LA when I was 18. I said, I'm not coming with you. I want to stay and be a musician. So I was alone. I stayed in LA. I wasn't in university. When I wasn't on stage, I was waiting tables to make some extra money. Like that was, I was doing everything I could to really make it work until we got signed to the label. And then at this party that we had for one of our record releases, somebody came over to me and asked me how long I was going to do this for. And I didn't understand the questions. So I said, can you explain, what do you mean? He said, well, how long are you going to play music? How long are you going to sing? And to a singer, that's a very strange question because you just assume that's what you do, right? Like you don't think about how long you're going to, I don't think any of my, any of the people that I looked up to, I don't think any of them ever thought about how long they're going to do it for, right? They just, they wrote, they played, they sang. And I said, I don't know, probably till we're successful. And then, I'm a family man. I'm sure I'll want to settle down at some point. So he said, when's that? I said, when's what? And he said, when is successful? And the moment I told him to, grab a drink and, go away from me, that he was kind of ruining my atmosphere that night. But that question sat with me every day for the next couple of weeks. I kept thinking, what is success? Where am I going? I never thought in those terms. I always just moved in the direction that felt right in the moment, which has its own advantages. But I never thought about what that means. And when I looked inside myself and then started thinking about the people in my industry and in the rock and roll world, and it doesn't always look great at the top. There were a lot of people who were suffering, though they had material success. They didn't have the inner wealth that I felt that I really wanted in my life. And that was a shock to my system to really then think about it, having to make a decision at 20 years old after I just spent the last 7 years working with a rock band, getting signed to a label and now touring. And things looked really good ahead. Things looked like they were going in the right direction, but to have to stop and say, maybe I'm on the wrong train. And that insight alone, that aha of this, even though it looks good and it feels good, and I'm going to get a lot of things that maybe I would want materially, I don't know that this is going to lead me to the inspired life, the creative life, the expansive life that I really want. And I made the hard decision to get off the train and search elsewhere for what that was. So then that's when I came to Jerusalem, because I was looking for truth. I was looking for answers. I was looking for what was next.
And prior to that, what was your sort of practice, like spiritual practice or personal development, if you will? Was there much present in your life during those 7 years?
So it's interesting. I was raised the first 10 years of my life, I was in a non-Orthodox but Jewish home. Then the second 10 years, my family became Orthodox around 9 or 10 years old. So they sent me to schools, but that really, although it was very much a part of my consciousness, I didn't find spirituality through Judaism not till much later, not till my 20s. For me, and I didn't really have much of a spiritual practice, but I will say my mother, who's deeply spiritual, she herself is clairvoyant, and I could tell you story after story about things that would blow your mind. She just lives on another plane. And I was given a lot of these tools and keys and fundamental insights to life in my childhood. So like instead of, Dr. Seuss, I was given chicken soup for the soul,
All right.
and speaking about reincarnation and souls and angels and energy and in the car on the way to school, my mother would probably be listening to Deepak Chopra or Eckhart Tolle or Wayne Dyer or someone like that, meaning like a lot of the self-help, a lot of new age spiritual ideas. So it was in my mind and kind of in my consciousness, though I didn't have any formal practice until I came to work on myself through my own choice. So a lot of these things were natural just because of the home that I was raised in, but I wasn't doing anything particular. I had just trying to live my life. If I was doing anything, it was that I had a deep reservoir of trust in the universe, trust in God, and in a force that was running things the right way. And I really, that's always been a core belief of mine, is that the world is working in your favor and is supporting you and supporting life, on the planet that we live in and in the direction that we're going in. And maybe the second thing was that I'm highly intuitive and really rely on my inner system in terms of joy, right? If it's joy is an important compass in life, and you have to listen to what makes you tick. So I was good at those two things, which was what helped me to leave when I left. But I didn't have a formal practice, or I had never spent time in any sort of psychology or self-help, seminars, anything like that. That came much later for me.
I see. I see. And I know obviously now, you are known as a spiritual teacher, published author, and so what would you say to someone, because globally this podcast is in over 100 countries, and thank you to all my amazing listeners and viewers. We have over 3 million listeners globally. So I want to give them some tools, right? You talked about joy, you talked about inner peace and, happiness. And what are some of the things that you've identified in your years of training that could perhaps help people today who struggle with fear, with a sense of uncertainty? They feel overwhelmed, right? With everything that is going on out there, perhaps illness in the family. Some people lost loved ones. Some people lost their job. Maybe they lost their business. And people are struggling globally. So, what are some of the recommendations you can make for people to sort of help them and relieve some of the stresses and the feelings that they have inside of them at the moment?
Sure. For me, I think, especially for the situations that you just described, I don't know if there's a more powerful gateway than spending time daily in meditation, as just as a very basic primer for your mind and for yourself, and more than just the nice quiet experience that you get in a meditation, or if you're listening to a guided meditation or listening to music. What it really does, if you're conscious, is that it allows you to become very present, and that's really the way forward. When you talk about people going through a hard time, that in the face of tragedy or the fear of an impending situation, most of the time we're caught up in something that happened in the past, or fear of something that's going to happen in the future. But in the moment that you're in this moment is okay, right? Most of the time. And when it's not okay, it, right? When there is danger or there is a problem, so you're not even thinking about, well, what should I do? You're actually engaged in the situation. So there you are. You're gonna have to be with that. But when there is space in your day, and you can really just get present with who you are, what's right in front of you, and try to pull the energy back, right? We spend so much mental energy projecting or dwelling, and we just have to kind of draw our energy back into this moment. And meditation is an extremely useful and today very easy to access. There's a bunch of great, for people who don't have a regular meditation practice, they can go find a great application. There's tons of apps that help you. That you can go find a YouTube video that helps you. I mean, it's available. Meaning, if you want it, you can have it. And that would be number one. And number two is, and again, maybe very basic, but so important, is spend time whether it's thinking about, speaking about, or writing about gratitude, things that are going well for you in your life. And again, for the same reason, when you're focusing on what's going well, so you're not focusing on what isn't, you're focusing on what is. You're, again, bringing yourself present, you're focusing on the good things that are going on in your life. And that's a primer for your mind. And if I can just throw in maybe one third tool, if you can do either of those two things first thing in the morning, right? So across all of Torah, which I spent the last decade and a half learning, and then everywhere else that I've ever read, whether it's in psychology or across any other spiritual text, that first hour of the day, that first section of your day is so open for potential for how the rest of your day is going to unfold. If you could do either of those two things, whether that's meditation or time meditating in gratitude, and obviously any other major tools that you'd want to do, if you can do that first thing in the morning, that is going to change your day. And if you can change your day, you change your week, you change your week, you change your month, you change your month, you change your life, meaning that these things truly do build. And God willing, everybody should find that peace within themselves. And I mean, obviously, that's a little bit about what we talk about in the book, but that's, it's a drop. There's so much that what people can do, and hopefully they find it.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And actually, as you said, it's written in Torah, it's written in many other spiritual texts for thousands of years, in, even in psychology and modern science, neuroscience, quantum physics, epigenetics, neuroendocrinology, psychoimmunology. All of these modern sciences confirm what you just said. And actually, if we look at the brain and the brain wave patterns, the different, like the alpha and theta. So the theta is when the door is open to your subconscious mind. And that first hour from the moment you wake up, if you can carve up that hour to do these positive rituals that Moshe is suggesting, any kind of meditation, and gratitude is so powerful. And not only for what's gone right in your life, you just start and just put your hands on your heart and say, I'm grateful to be alive. I'm grateful for my health. I'm grateful for the good night's sleep I just had, and you're woken up. I mean, listen, there are people who go to sleep, they don't wake up. They die in their sleep. So being grateful you're alive, you actually just woken up, and your eyesight is still there. You can see, you can hear, all your senses are still there. And then you can list, I'm grateful for my home, for my family, for this. So once you count your blessings, and this is how you begin your day, I mean, I say to people that 1 hour in the morning is like a foundation. If you're doing construction, if you are building a home, the day is the house, finished product. The morning 1 hour, the hour of power, I call it, it's a foundation. So if you want to do meditation, you want to do gratitude journaling, you want to just do affirmation of gratitude, and then read Moshe's book, read other books, watch YouTube videos, whatever. So mind, body, spirit, if you can do those things, and also for your emotions. So 4 pillars, yeah. And this, you can do all of this in 1 hour. And you're going to have as you say, you're going to have a perfect day. You're going to have a perfect week. Perfect week becomes perfect month and perfect year. And all of a sudden, 12 months later, you actually do not recognize your life. You feel so empowered, full of energy, health, vitality, success in relationships, success at work, in business. It's incredible.
That little change in the morning can really change your life. And I know you're speaking from experience. I can hear it in your voice, and I can tell you from my own experience that's true. And it's exactly like you said. I think every modality out there today, whether it's ancient or it's new age or it's scientific or it's spiritual, we can all agree that taking a step in the right direction first thing in the morning and moving into these places. And I love what you said about just going straight to gratitude for the fact that you're breathing, you're alive, you're here. That's it.
Yeah, it's very powerful because, whether you are religious or spiritual or whatever, just, listing the things you are grateful for, it just brings you inward, makes you feel inspired, which from Latin means in spirit.
Mm-hmm.
When you feel empowered, you feel it's a different state. And what most people do the moment, I think they did a lot of research in the last 10 years, that most people, I think, the moment they wake up, they grab their cell phone, their mobile phone, and they go through things and start thinking about the problems, and start the worst part, they start to visualize the worst possible scenario of what they don't like to see happen,
Mm.
right? And now this is how they prime their day. And what do you think? What kind of day will they have? Will they be happy? Will they feel empowered? Will they feel inspired? And then the week goes by, and then they say, thanks God it's Friday. I hate Mondays, Monday blues. But Monday blues only exist because this is how you've been programming yourself, because of your mindset, of your of your unconscious mental rehearsal. And then somehow, miraculously, now the Friday comes, you're going to drink loads, maybe take drugs, maybe do emotional eating. And then somehow, miraculously, your life is going to change over Friday, Saturday, and you're going to start to dread going back into the next week, because Sunday night is when people begin to rehearse. Oh my God, I hate Mondays, Sunday night. So why? Why would you live like that? Why would you self-sabotage? It's a self-created, environment of suffering.
Yeah, no, and like you said, people often use the weekends to escape, right? Through all the different means of escape, when really weekends are such a powerful gift. If you have the time to drink, eat, or do any of those things, that also means you have the time where you can be doing major healing. You could be doing amazing, amazing work over the weekends. You know, well, I support anybody who wants to take the time, money, and energy and go to a workshop or a seminar. But even if you don't have that, you have YouTube right in front of you. You have the Human Experience podcast right in front of you. No matter where you are, you can get your hands on podcasts, on hours and hours of amazing material. No matter what your field that you like, in the infinite amount of fields of where you can draw from, it's all available today. And if you use the weekends the right way, again, then instead of dreading the week, you're looking forward to how you can maximize this coming week. So the weekends are also a very powerful outlet for where you can invest yourself in. That's it's more than self-development. It's like it's coming alive. It's healing. It's an opportunity for healing every weekend.
I call it strong end, not weak end. Strong end.
Love
That's
that.
what I call it, because it's my favorite time of the week. I love Mondays. I'm the one like celebrating Mondays. People are like, what's wrong with this guy? But you said it so well. I mean, look, I offer a lot of I do a lot of philanthropy. I offer a lot of free group coaching. I do a lot of free webinars, free seminars, live on stage. Go to schools. I inspire, motivate people. But what I have found in over 15 years of my work is that, with all the information is out there everywhere, right? Free information. And in this age of technology and age of information, ignorance is a choice, right?
Yeah.
So what I've identified that, people can read your book and listen to this podcast, can go to a seminar, webinar, read other books, and they can have aha moments. They can get data, they can have an insight. Oh, now I know why am I the way I am. But what I've identified that some people, or a lot of people, use it as an excuse to stay stuck. Now that I know what's wrong with me, my father was overbearing, my spouse betrayed me in my relationship, my business partner betrayed me, ran away with money. Now that I know that's the root cause of the way I feel and the way my life is, now I'm going to stay stuck. So what did you identify in your journey and also working with people? Why do people have the tools in front of them? They know the theories, but the practice isn't that common. So there is common sort of information repeated over and over again, whether it's in Torah, whether it's in other ancient texts and psychology and all these modern sciences, but people seldom actually follow through. Why is that?
Yeah, I think you're so on the money. It's amazing. Like that's so right on. And almost all the clients that I've worked with, the greatest moment in your experience with working with a human being is when they take the initiative to make a change. all the glorious inner work that you do beforehand that gets a person into themselves and where they can experience what's happening maybe on a deeper level. That's wonderful and beautiful. But the sparks and the fireworks happen when you see a person then realize, now I can change now. I don't have to be stuck in that old story. And that's really what it is we have these stories, we have these patterns, we have a vision of what we think life is supposed to be. And then we get a little bit more sophisticated. And like you said, you get an aha moment or an insight. Oh, that's why I am the way I am. And then you could get stuck in and suffice with that understanding. But what I think really changes the game for people is when you can expand their vision of potential for what they can do next. I think that's for what I have found is that when a person doesn't believe in themselves or believe in the possibility of change, so at least there's a certain satisfaction in knowing that, okay, this is why I am the way I am, and I'm going to be okay with making maybe some small changes for the rest of my life. But when you can show a person that the whole belief system is based on something that you've agreed to, a reality that maybe isn't even true, the whole thing, you're like, your whole vision of how great you can be and what you can do. And what if you just stopped and pressed restart? And now I just ask you, well, what do you like? What do you love? What do you want? Right? If you could, if the world was now completely open to you, and if you can, when people can enter into that state, right? That state of consciousness of potential, of infinite possibility, of being able to think let's forget what I think was possible and kind of move into what I believe is impossible, then you start to see change. But that's going to be the hardest moment to get to. But when you get there and you can maintain that state of infinite potential, which is like you were saying, right, with epigenetics, right? Like if you can just realize that your body's doing what it does because you still think the way you do, but if you just think a new program, so your body starts to move in a different direction, that's the same thing with everything in a person's life. Who could just open that door from what you think was possible to from what you think is impossible, and just imagine it just a little bit, right? That's where movement really starts to happen.
Wonderful, wonderful. I call it jumping in the river of change, taking a plunge. And the thing what I've identified, um, often people unconsciously say, show me the evidence. I need to see it in order to believe it. And I say, well, you see it all the time. You say, what do you mean? I said, well, look, you want to have different results, different outcomes in your life, but you are doing the same things over and over. You think the same way, you behave the same way, you feel the same way, you start the day the same way. Do you complain? Do you blame? Do you live in guilt? Do you live in shame? Did you identify all of these things that you do? I mean, did you do any contemplation, any journaling to come to realization, to identify? Or are you running on autopilot, kind of like a hamster on a hamster wheel? You never stepped out of the wheel to become aware. So awareness, it gives you power. This is what people don't understand. They say, well, if I become aware, then this is a problem. Somehow, if I become aware of my repetitive negative emotions or repetitive negative behaviors or thought processes, somehow I'm going to die. And they've been hiding away from this and having this physiological pain behind their breastbone, which obviously you have the energy center here, and just below around solar plexus area, the pain resides, like fluctuates in the intensity, but it resides here, solar plexus area, and just close to the heart in the chest area. And I say to them, you tried for 10 years, 20, 30 years to shy away or stay away to numb this pain. And what this pain is actually asking for you to acknowledge it. It's like you're a father, you have children. It's like a child coming to you after they've been playing outside and they've fallen and they hurt their knee, maybe the leg is bleeding, and the child needs comfort, needs a hug and a kiss for this adult version to say, I love you, it's okay. They don't need for you to ignore them or to maybe even, tell them something negative. but to say, it's okay, I see you, I hear you, I'm here for you. They need comfort, they need unconditional love. And I said, when you acknowledge this pain within you, it's part of you. And actually, I do this deep dive where we identify it's the 5-year-old. It's their inner 5-year-old child. Now they're in the body of a 40-year-old, but that 5-year-old, it's crying in pain constantly. And they've tried everything but to see the pain. Once they begin to see, obviously that's the process, it takes some time, but once they begin to open their heart. They begin to go in the spirit, they begin to feel empowered, they have more energy, as you say, pulling this energy back into their life. And now they begin to experience magic and miracles in their life every single day. It's incredible.
Yeah, that whole experience that you described of you have to feel it, right? You have to let yourself feel the pain the same way that you hold the child, right? And the moment you begin to feel is the moment you begin to heal. And that opens up all sorts of worlds for you in your life. And people asking you say, well, I want to see it before I can believe it. And what you're really saying is that you have to believe it so that you can start to see it, right? That's how you have to really, it all starts from the inside. When you can, people think if we change the conditions, so then that will affect how I feel. But really, it's when you can change how you feel that will shift all the conditions of your life. It's absolute reverse.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's why I love having these conversations with you. And I think we can record for a week. We can record for a week. It's amazing. And, I know you have, various other practices. I mean, we talked about some other practices that, you can. Now, you've spoken about consciousness several times, how obviously you do various practices and you teach other people. And for, all the texts that you've studied for 15 plus years. Now, let's talk a little bit about consciousness, what that is, and how identifying and learning about it for our viewers and listeners can help them in their lives.
Yeah, I mean, I think consciousness is kind of the word of our generation in a lot of ways. That's what we're using to describe that experience of self beyond the personality, self beyond the story, right? Meaning, most of us, most of the time, right, it's still where we are at this point in history. Um, we identify as a person that has a certain name and a background, that was born in a certain place, that has a certain history, that has a certain occupation, a certain family lifestyle, that may or may not have certain physical attributes, and then we say that's who we are, right? I am Moshe from this place doing this thing with this type of life. And those are all surface level kind of experience. Those are all true. Those are all happening. But consciousness is when you actually step back and you recognize you're the experiencer of all of those things. You are the one that is witnessing and having the experience of being this personality, being the John or the Susan or the Moshe or the Eldon. You're the one who's seeing that, and what that, and that is always true. That is always there, meaning the same you, the 5-year-old you, the 40-year-old you, and the 80-year-old you, the one who's seeing never change. The voice of the body changes, right? And the things you do in the body change, but the one that was watching it and stores all of the experience. And even if a person has memory loss at the end of their life, but it's still the them that has the memory loss. That's consciousness is, I like the way that Wayne Dyer says it. He calls it like the ghost in the machine, right? Or throughout history, we call it the soul. But it's really the self with a capital S, and not the lowercase self of the personality, and it's in that space of consciousness where we actually have free will, right? The ability to choose is only from that space. Everything else is actually programs. It's all the stuff that we've downloaded, and now we're kind of running, like you said, on autopilot. And the beauty of consciousness and the beauty of moving into that higher state of experience is when you bring your focus and attention onto itself, right, onto the you behind the system. It's in those moments that now you can actually say, well, what do I want to do now? right? What do I want to do next? And it's coming from a place of choice. Until one's in the seat of consciousness, there's not very much choice that's happening. It's kind of just playing itself out based on what you put into the system before, which is why consciousness is, I mean, for a plethora of reasons why it's so important to talk about. One of the main things is that it's from that place that you can actually decide what you're going to do in the next moment, right? In this moment, the next word that comes out of your mouth, is it going to be loving, or is it going to be fear-based? Is it going to be, positive, or is it going to be a complaint, like you said? And if you're not there to make the choice, so it's just going to continue on doing whatever it's been doing till now. So, this is the awakening of human potential, is the ability to awaken to our consciousness.
Wonderful, wonderful. And yeah, this is one of my favorite topics to actually talk about, teach about, write about. And, it's so important that I need to stress that to our viewers and listeners, that I've identified that a lot of people spend very little time learning about consciousness, and most importantly, having an experience, inward experience of their own consciousness, and basically having like a love affair with your own consciousness. Because once you do that, you actually feel so empowered, because you also spoken about the present moment, Moshe. It's so important, and you don't practice present moment state of being, how you think, how you feel, only during meditation. You actually get up as it from the meditation, and this is how you are for the rest of your day, in the present moment. And when you are connected profoundly to your consciousness, you become aware that you can choose. You can choose how to communicate, how to think, how to feel, how to behave. And actually, science has confirmed that what they label as consciousness, the neuroscience, they said, happens 4 billion times per second, the process of think, feel, choose. So 4 billion times per second. And when you are connected profoundly to your consciousness, you are actually aware of the speed of think, feel, choose. And it kind of, the time slows down, and not just in your meditation, but throughout the day. And it's incredible to be able to experience. I mean, you can't understand this truly intellectually. You have to go inward to have an experience.
That's right. It's the same reason why you can't tell somebody they're a soul, right? And then that could be enough, right? It can't remain an idea or a concept, because then you just have another concept in your system of ideas and biases and opinions about life, instead of actually just being in that space. And present moment awareness only, I mean, it's married with consciousness, right? That really they're one and the same, right? Is your ability to be present moment, because consciousness is always now. It's what's always happening, and every moment is really now, right? There's the famous saying, "If not now, when?" Right? Which means, if not now, when is it? Right? Because it's not real. It's only ever now.
Yeah, the past was a now at that time, and the future is going to be now, a minute from now, a day from now. So it's always a now. A friend of mine sent me this GIF, and it was a clock, and it below says, "What time is it?" And every point says now, 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 now. What time is it? Now. And you can begin the process of change by introspection, by having because a lot of things out there have been teaching us for decades that we are powerless, that we are limited, that we need something or someone outside of us to help us improve our lives. But then I would say probably last couple of decades, more and more people are becoming aware that many systems are collapsing, and they are so out of date, whether it's educational, medical, spiritual, whatever, so religious, many other sort of systems out there, because people have become very, very pragmatic. Say, okay, I have a problem, I need a solution. how do you do it? I've tried this, I've tried that. Now I want to begin to change. What do I do? So I think it's important to be consistent with certain practices. Don't just practice meditation one time and say, this is not for me, this doesn't work, this mumbo jumbo doesn't work, right? Or practice gratitude for like 10 minutes, and then for the rest of the day you are complaining and in practicing unworthiness, right? So be consistent. And in your experience, being consistent to begin to see the results, how long should one be practicing each day for a certain period of time to begin to experience results?
I don't know if there's a set number, because everybody's different and everybody's got their own, clock. If we're talking about time, everybody's body's got their own clock. I think scientifically today they're saying it takes about 66 days for a habit to really have its effect and for it to really take hold. Growing up, I remember they said you should, whatever you want to do, you got to do it for 30 days. But, if you think about it in like sports, right? If you use sports as an analogy, some injuries can heal in a couple of weeks, and some injuries you can heal from, but they may take you a few months, and it requires a lot of physical therapy. And I think that's the reason why you can't really put a number on this. It's something that you have to know that it does. The starting point is you have to know that it works. Therapy works. Physical therapy works. Meditation works. Being present works. And it's not like a mechanism. It's just a reality. It's a truth. And but you have to know that it's something that needs to be done. And maybe for one person, what they experience I've been in sessions where I lead a meditation, and someone in the room has a divine experience that, maybe another person in the room would take 10 years before they have a similar experience. They're just programmed differently. And it's also good to point out, like you said, the purpose of the meditation isn't just for that moment, right? It's really what happens afterwards and what you carry with you. And maybe just for the listeners, it's also good to know that you can know that it's working by the degree of joy and peace and love that you experience. And those are things that we want, right? When we talk about the importance of consciousness and the importance of meditation, everything that you're really looking for out there is all already in here. And it's when you get to that place that you already get all of the feelings that we're looking for. Because at the end of the day, why do we do what we do? We do what we do because we want to get a certain result and to have a feeling of what it means to get that result, right? We're looking for the experience of whatever it is we're trying to get to. Well, you can have that already. You are already that which you desire. You are already the light you wish to shine. It's waiting in there. And so the power of a meditation practice or gratitude and being consistent with it is you're spending more time in the state that you're trying to get to. And then everything that happens afterwards is okay. It will be how it will be, right? No outcomes are yours. All outcomes are good because you're already in the right place to begin with.
Absolutely. We have a few more questions before we finish today's podcast, but I want to ask you where people can find you. Is there a website, or what is your handle on social media if people want to follow you, and if you have products and services that people can find out more about you?
Sure. Thank you, Eldon. I think all my handles everywhere is at Moshe Gersht. So my name, how it's spelled over here. I think the Facebook page is Moshe Gersht Official. And the YouTube channel is where I'm going to be constantly putting up new content, new videos, and ideas on all of the sections of consciousness, from being in the proper state to how to actually create the type of life you're looking for, and everything in between. And that's youtube.com/Moshe Gersht. And the new book is available on Amazon. And that should be available in most countries around the world. So wherever people are listening, they should be able to find it there.
So I'm interested to know, talking about your book, it's all the same to me. How did you come up with that title, and what does that mean to you?
So I thank you for asking. I love that. And everybody asked me about the title. And what's funny is that a lot of people were really against it. I love it because for me, it really points to the core teaching. And it really comes from two places. One is, it's kind of like a summary of our whole conversation. The there's a whole world that's happening on the surface of human experience. And in that reality, everything is different, right? You and I are different. There are no two cells in the world that are absolutely identical, the same. Everything has its own separate existence, right? Everything is different on the surface until you can go all the way down in beyond it, even beyond the quantum level, to kind of like what we would call the non-local intelligence, or what in religion we call God, or what we're going to call pure consciousness or spirit. When you go all the way in, there is a space where it's all the same, right? So it's all the same to me is kind of a mantra of I don't want to live with just the surface level of reality. I don't want to live with our differences. I want us to live with our sameness and our connectedness, and that the thoughts that we think are affecting not me, they're affecting everybody. And they're not just affecting everybody, but they're affecting nature. And they're not just affecting nature. Everything is impacted because there's a web of connection between all of reality, right? And all of reality is linked in together in that sense. So though throughout history, we relate that in a religious sense to God, to spirit. So wherever you're standing, whether you prefer that language or another language, is irrelevant to me. It's the knowing that there's a sameness that binds and connects all of reality together, and it's a unity consciousness. So whether you call that Allah or God or Hashem or Ein Sof or spirit, it is irrelevant. What's relevant is that we're now trying to reach a world where we can connect on that level.
Yeah, the oneness. Yeah,
The oneness.
one race, human race. And you mentioned the pure consciousness, and at the center of pure consciousness, there is pure love. And when you practice what Moshe and I discussed in today's podcast, you actually begin to experience love beyond measure. We're not talking about love like, love for your puppy or maybe for your spouse, for your children. It's love where you actually, I think the closest thing I can describe it as is the emotional arousal, and this is also physically measurable, that your heart gets engorged with this energy and just shoots up to your brain, and it's ecstasy, pure ecstasy. That's the kind of love that I'm describing. And actually love doesn't have opposites. So hate is not opposite of love. Love is the union of everything. It's in the center of yin and yang, the plus and the minus, the positive and the negative. And this is what binds us as human race, as the human experience, as the spiritual beings that we are, having this experience. And that is that oneness. And Moshe could be in Jerusalem, I could be in London, but the energy that we feel between the two of us, I feel that I am sitting in the chair next to you, Moshe. That's the kind of impact that and the power that we have. And so before we close today, why do people sort of live under this sort of 2-foot false ceiling, like a glass ceiling imaginary, that they sort of feel sort of constricted, and they feel sort of ashamed to be alive? They live stuck, they feel limited. Why do they do that? If we are truly one human being, if you will, like the oneness, the power that resides within us, that everything that we say, everything that we think, everything that we feel, not only impacts every atom in our body, in our life, but then everything and everyone around us, including thousands of miles away from us.
Yeah, I think that's the question of life. I think you really just asked, the question behind your question is, why aren't we already all enlightened? Right? That's really the question. And the answer is, to the way that I perceive it, is that this is what we've been doing. This is what life is. This is what history is. This is what the experience of all beings are in this movement of coming towards the realization, whether you like the language of consciousness becoming aware of itself, or if you appreciate the language of, I think like the world's vision, the religious vision of a messianic reality. I think this is the awakening of life. And so the question is, well, why is it so hard? And the answer is life, the way that life has created itself, right? The way that we are is because that's the way that we are, because we're here going through the motions of trying to come out. But anybody that's listening to this right now is already somewhat awake, right? No one is listening. You and I are not having this conversation, and the listeners who are part of our experience right now, no matter when they are in time, I'm speaking to you, right? And you're speaking to them. And we're bound together and connected by virtue of the fact that that is what is happening. And you wouldn't be listening to this if you weren't already open to the idea. You certainly wouldn't be this far into the podcast if you weren't already open to the experience of stepping into the light. And I think if we're going to make it really simple, why are people like the other way? Why are we all like that sometimes? Because it's easier. It's easier to fall into the trap of the superficial. It was difficult to create the microscope. It was even more difficult to get to the quantum level, but not difficult like, oh, it's hard or bad, but difficult because it requires seeing more deeply and feeling more deeply and living more deeply. And I think the process of life has been this journey of getting to this point. And we're in a very, very special time in history where even though we're not all there yet, more and more people are becoming aware that we don't have to be stuck in the old way. There's a new way to live. And we're right around the corner from seeing this really spread far. So God willing.
Globally, yeah, God willing. I agree. I feel so grateful to have shared this experience with you in this beautiful podcast. And before we go, I'd like to ask you one more question. I mean, you've already described who you are and why you are here, but I prefer to ask you anyway, what is the impact you would like to have on humanity while you are here?
I'd like the light to shine bright through my candle, and that it lights up other candles while it's here, as many candles as possible. Everyone's got light within them, and when you can find your light, you become an ignition for other light in the world. So what type of impact? I guess that is to be seen, but if I could choose, it would be to bring as many people into that space as possible while I'm here.
Wow. Truly inspiring, Brother Moshe. I appreciate you immensely. I felt that, the light. And for listeners and viewers, we appreciate you both, Moshe and I. Thank you for your love and support throughout this period for the last 2 years that I've had this podcast. And I'm sure Moshe and I will be doing other things together in a very near future. And it was an absolute pleasure to have you on my podcast, Moshe. Thank you.
Mutual feelings are certainly mutual.